Welcome to the Guns and Gavel Show, where Arizona's self-defense and firearms attorney, Tim Forshey, weighs in on the delicate balance between the law and personal protection. Learn about the legalities and realities of self-defense as he dives deep to discuss firearms laws, legal use of force, concealed carry, and home defense training. The Guns and Gavel Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, I think you've got some unique perspective that I don't have, and I don't think John has, that we've actually been involved in one of these mass murders that you were involved in. Do you have any perspective on what makes these people snap and do these kinds of things that regular folks like me could learn from? What do we look out for? Who are we scared of? Who are we worried about?
Well, I've done a whole lot of research since this happened, and I do things with Survival Mindset, with Strategos International, with Sheepdog Seminars, with, I've done things with David Grossman, that's written several books and things, and it almost always goes back to the people that do these things are on psychotropic drugs. They're misfits. Most of the time, they're lacking a father image in their life, and there's a lot of things that just run with these kind of people, and they're misfits. They just and like I say, don't have a father figure for a whole lot, and drugs that they put. And it seems like our school system they get paid more money if they can diagnose you with something and put you on some sort of drugs, and now you're special needs, and it just seems like they do that all the time, and people end up on these drugs, and I think it's just a bad idea. Yeah. And I'm not a doctor or psychiatrist, and I'm not saying that there aren't kids that need to get help and medication, but I think we're way over medicated as a nation right now, and some of the things that we're seeing we didn't see when we were young.
So when we Google your name and we look up the incident from November 5th of 17, and we also are forced to read the name of the bad guy, I'll just call him Satan's instrument that day. How do you feel about that? I've got feelings. John and I have talked about this before, and I think John probably is a bit wiser about it than I am. But I guess I feel like we shouldn't ever have to see those people's names or faces. What they're seeking is notoriety. They're seeking infamy, and it seems like we give them that post-mortem, and that then encourages the next clown. Again, from the voice of a reason here, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you 110%.
Good.
And so here's another thing. So last year, right around this time of year, right around graduation time, there was a graduation party that happened, and a guy pulled out an AR-15 and started shooting into the crowd. And a young lady pulled a pistol out and took him out before he shot anybody.
Wow.
And we don't seem to know her name.
Right.
And it always makes me wonder, and I don't want my name tied to the shooter either.
Right.
And I hear so many stories, and they talk about me and they talk about the shooter by name, and I would prefer his name to go away. And I would prefer that media does not talk about these people and use their names, because now I think law enforcement, and we need to study them and their lives and stuff, what happens, so we can prevent this sort of thing. But we don't have to add their names in on any, like your own broadcast. I am glad you don't talk about his name, because I don't want to be tied to it.
Right. I mean, we can learn something from everybody who dies from cancer, but we don't need to reveal their name when we're talking about what we learned. Right? I mean, I agree. So John and I had a friendly little debate about this, and I said, I think we could pass a national law to make it illegal for the media to do that. And John, again, kind of corrected me with his libertarian compass, which I always appreciate. And John said, I think that we could the media should self-regulate. I mean, and again, don't take a side. I shouldn't have told you my thoughts versus John's thoughts. I don't put you in that box.
I will.
But I'd be curious to see what are your thoughts about that. You've been involved with the media intimately for 5 years. Do you think that they can self-censor? Do you think that they can do that for us?
I don't think as the way they are now. I think they should, but I don't think they will.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've interviewed with some media from Europe, and they won't sway the story like American media does. Because they do have laws that prevent them from doing certain things and changing interviews.
Right.
And that's really crazy that I see that. But I do believe in freedom of speech, and 100%. I don't believe that our Constitution should be monkeyed with in any way. I think our founding fathers were brilliant and inspired by God themselves. And I'm a strict constitutionalist, and I don't believe that we should pass too many laws to talk about how the media can speak and can't. But I do think that we as Americans need to start watching the media that actually gets the stories right.
Well, that's the truth. Yeah.
And
You
so
vote
we're
with your eyeballs and you vote with your clicks. Guess what?
That was John's point. He makes a good point. If we didn't consume it, it's like the war against drugs. Well, we're always focusing on supply, but demand is at least as important. If there's people that want to escape reality by taking drugs, it's going to be hard to keep drugs out of their hands. So, if we're consuming all of this stuff on the media, if we want to know more information about the shooter, we want to see the interview with his mom and dad, well, then they're going to keep giving it to us. So I think John's got a great point. We need to have a little bit more self-control on that. So, yeah.
Well,
Stephen, I have a question for you. I think this is right on the lines of what you're doing now, because you're now an ambassador for the Gun Owners of America and working on legislation to keep the right to keep and bear arms and court cases and those things. I'm sure any of the national level organizations would have loved to have your endorsement and you be working for them. So what made you decide to work with GOA? I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm really curious. What made you decide of the national organizations that was the one you wanted to work with?
Well, look at the organizations and what they're doing. And GOA claims to be and is the only group out there that is no compromise at all. And when it comes to our Second Amendment, we don't compromise. We're fighting the pistol brace ban. We're fighting the legislation that John Cornyn, Texas senator, I hate to say, got 14 other rhinos to trample our Constitution, and now our young people, 18 to 20-year-olds, have to go through a mental background check to be able to buy a gun. They get automatically delayed the moment they go in to purchase a gun. The shooter in Sutherland Springs was 27 years old. The shooter in Vegas was 60-something years old. This is not a maturity issue. It's a mental health issue.
Right.
And so
don't you find it odd that we allow them to enlist in the Marine Corps and go fly helicopters before they're that age as well? Isn't that interesting?
And carry M16s and get into M1 Abram tanks and defend our freedom. And yet you want to, so I know 14-year-olds that are more mature than 40-year-olds. And so Gun Owners of America is fighting that fight for our young people. They're fighting Prop 114 and in Oregon. They're fighting, we just got a red flag law overturned in New York. We're fighting the assault weapons ban in Illinois right now. Yeah. Illinois, yes. Yeah. And we're about to get, and this is going to be ground shattering when it does, we are about to get the high capacity magazine ban in California overturned.
Good old Judge Benitez.
It looks like that's going to happen, and GOA is part of that. And which, by the way, it's not high capacity magazines. it's standard capacity.
Normal
Their
capacity.
standard
right.
capacity.
It is what comes with the pistol. It's what comes with the rifle. It is not a high capacity magazine. And our Second Amendment was written for the average person, we the people, to be able to keep the government in check.
I say this all the time, that most people don't recognize the Battle of Lexington was fought when they said, wait, the Crown wants to come and take our guns. They want to come take the guns. And we think of that as, shoulder-fired firearms. No, it was cannons.
Yeah.
They were fighting for cannons.
And you're right. That's what lit the fuse, because prior to that, they'd been taxing everything for 30 years, and it was becoming incredibly uncomfortable. And the whole taxation without representation, we always talk about, that's what started the Revolutionary War. John's right. 1775 in Lexington Concord, what started the war was when the British came for the magazines and the cannons and the gunpowder, and that's when people said, okay, I guess we're starting this thing. Yeah.
And it's crazy because they say 3% of Americans were what started this, but then when it started, they're going to come take your guns away, everybody joined in.
Yeah. Yep. That's true.
They're like,
I'm glad that they've got such a great representative in you, Stephen. I think that I think the thing that I love about this is everyone can relate to this wonderful man who has raised a family faithfully, loves his grandchildren, lives on land that his family's owned for hundreds of years, and just wants to be a peaceful citizen who minds his own business, and yet in that moment was called to protect his entire community. And that's not gung-ho, plate-wearing, kick-indoors, SWAT teaming. That's just a regular guy who was forced into a terrible position. I think that's a great ambassadorship.
It is.
Well, people ask me all the time how I could do what I did. And my first reaction is, how could you not? Because tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up and you're going to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you did nothing while your community was being murdered and you knew you had skills and tools, then you're not going to be able to respect the man in the mirror anymore.
I think that brings up the obvious questions about Uvalde and how it was different from what happened with you. I guess we don't have time to get into that today, but that's a question I keep asking, is how could those guys all stand around with weaponry, listening to that gunfire, and not enter? I just don't understand.
And they had the body armor, they had the ballistic helmets, they had the shields, and they had fully loaded AR-15s. And when I think about that, I actually feel sorry for those officers, because they have got to make peace with what they did not do. And I can make peace with what I did. I have a hard time with what happened to my community, but I know that I did everything I could to protect the people that I love. And I knew many of those people in that church. I'm fourth generation. Sutherland Springs is under 600 total population. You can't live in a community like that without knowing the people in it. And so I can, we all have to die someday. And it's not about how you die in life, but it's about how you live in life.
Great words.
And I heard a saying not long ago that's become one of my favorites, because I'm a very peaceful man. And the saying goes that if you're not capable of extreme violence, you're not peaceful, you're harmless.
I like that.
And I am a peaceful man.
Never heard that before.
But make no mistake, I'm not harmless.
And that wraps up another episode of Guns and Gavels. Join us next time to learn more about the legal use of force, personal protection, and firearms training. Show your support and hit the like and subscribe buttons to make sure you never miss an episode. Till next time, stay safe.